In light of the former Gateway, Arkansas police chief escaping from North Central Unit in Arkansas a couple of days ago, let's talk about the crimes of that individual, Grant Hardin. So in order to talk about the crimes of Grant Hardin, we would have to go all the way back to 1997. So in 1997, November 9th, 1997, a teacher from Frank Tillery Elementary was at school on that Sunday. She was there preparing her lesson plans for the following day. That teacher, the victim in this case, was not the only person that was there at the school on that Sunday. There was also a local church congregation that used the cafeteria to the school to meet in. So there was over 100 other people that were in the building on this particular Sunday. Now, being at the school by herself on Sunday was a little bit out of the norm for this teacher. Normally, there was an assistant that was also there helping her, but on this particular day, she was there by herself. So at around 11:30 a.m., the Rogers Police Department received a call from this teacher, and that teacher told police that she had been sexually assaulted in that school building. So according to the teacher, she and her co-teacher normally come to the school to work, but on this particular day, like I said, the teacher was the only one that was there. She got to the school just before 9 a.m. on this day. She parked, she went in the school, she saw the people that were there for the church service, and then she went to her room and she started working. Around 10:40 a.m., this teacher went out of her room and to the bathroom that belonged to the teachers. I guess it's just always a thing. I never saw one personally, but the teacher's lounge always has its own bathroom, because they don't want to use the bathroom that the little kids use. Don't blame them there at all, having little kids myself. But she went to that teacher's lounge bathroom. According to this teacher, she used the restroom. She went to leave the bathroom. And when she came out of the bathroom, there was a man standing there in front of her that had a weapon pointed at her. Now, this man told her, don't say anything and back up into the restroom. So she did. And when they both got into the restroom, this man had the teacher lie down on the floor. He told her to take off all of her clothing, and then he proceeded to force her to perform acts on him. But that wasn't enough for this particular person. This person then, after forcing the teacher to perform certain acts on him, she told her, we're going to go to a different room. He gave her shirt back. She was allowed to put her shirt back on, but he kept her pants and underwear. Now, I would think that he probably kept her pants and underwear so that she couldn't run away or wouldn't run away. It would be far less likely that this teacher would take off because she didn't have on any bottoms. So he took her to a different room where there was a rug on the floor and forced her to lie down on this rug while he raped her. Now, the suspect had given the teacher back her pants. Her pants were to block her face from being able to see the suspect, which I think is a little crazy because she's already seen you, my dude. But he finished doing what he was doing to her, had the teacher roll over on her stomach, and then he left the room. Now, the teacher waited a few minutes before she went out of the room, found her pants in the hallway, got herself dressed, and found an on-duty janitor. Together, they called 911. Police responded. Now, police say that they were able to gather over 100 pieces of evidence that day, including a sweatshirt and a t-shirt. Now, the reason that this sweatshirt is important is because the teacher says that she felt something drip on her leg from the suspect, and she wiped that substance that dripped from the suspect onto this sweatshirt. So that was taken into evidence, and they were able to use that to get a DNA profile of the suspect. But that DNA profile didn't have any matches at that time. So that's 1997. Now let's forward to 2017. So we're going to fast forward to February 23rd, 2017. Now, on this day, the police in Benton County, Arkansas, receive a 911 call about a deceased person on Gan Ridge Road there in Benton County. So when police get to the scene, they see a white Chevy truck that has the driver in the truck who is slumped over toward the passenger side. He's been shot in the head. Now, this person, his name is James Appleton. James Appleton was employed by the city of Gateway and the city of Gateway Rural Water Authority. Police find out from the brother-in-law of James Appleton that they were talking on the phone at the time that a loud noise was heard by the brother-in-law. The brother-in-law is also, at that time, the mayor of Gateway. So I guess they work together. I would assume that in some form or fashion, the two of them worked together. And so the brother-in-law, his name was Mr. Tillman, tells police that he was talking to Mr. Appleton on the phone when Mr. Appleton said that he was going to pull over on the side of the road because he was about to hit a dead zone there on the dirt road in order to continue the conversation, so he had to pull over. It's Arkansas, of course. So Mr. Appleton pulled over on the side of the road. They continued their phone conversation. At some point in this phone conversation, Mr. Appleton told Mr. Tillman that a white car had pulled up behind him. And then, like I said, Mr. Tillman said that he heard a loud noise and he never heard anything else from Mr. Appleton. The loud noise sounded like what could have been a car door slamming very loudly or a gunshot. There was also another car that came down Gan Ridge Road around the same time. Now, this car came upon the two white vehicles, the white car and the white truck, on Gan Ridge Road, and was waved around by the driver of the car. Now, this individual says that he grew up in the area. He's lived in the area all of his life. And so he happened to know the driver of the car that was parked behind the truck. And he says that this driver was Grant Hardin. He says he looked at him when he drove by him and he knew it was Grant Hardin. According to that driver, Grant waved him around. So the driver of this particular vehicle went around both the white car and the white truck. At that point in time, he saw the driver of the truck was sitting up. Anyway, the driver of this vehicle continues going down the road. And as he is driving down the road, he hears a loud noise that he says could have been a car door slamming loudly or a gunshot. And this individual looked in his rearview mirror. He sees the white car coming up behind him quickly. The white car turns off on a dirt road. And being an individual that's like, I wonder what's going on. The witness in this case decided to turn around and go back and check on the truck because he saw the truck was still there. And the driver of the truck was deceased in that vehicle. He had suffered a gunshot wound to his head and neck area. Naturally, I think the police are like, well, we need to talk to Grant Hardin. So they attempt to talk to Grant Hardin, but at some point during their investigation, they see Grant Hardin drive up to where this investigation is occurring. He is in a car with his wife and child. Now, police are like, hey, Mr. Hardin, we need to talk to you. We're going to need to talk to you. And so Grant rides with police to the sheriff's office, and his wife and child drive to the sheriff's office where they are all interviewed. The wife tells police Grant had been out in the yard, working in the yard that day. She had been in the house doing things. She didn't know that Grant ever left, but she admitted that had he left, she wouldn't have known necessarily. She says that at some point, Grant came back in the house and was like, hey, let's go out to dinner. It wasn't anything that was planned. It was spur of the moment. When they went out to dinner, I don't know where they went, but when they went out to dinner, Grant did not eat his salad. And he went to the bathroom and spent quite a bit of time in the bathroom there at the restaurant where they were eating, which both things were odd. Grant Hardin was arrested and charged with capital murder. Like I said, Grant Hardin was a former police chief of the city of Gateway. Now, I haven't seen a single thing that points to why Grant Hardin would have shot Mr. James Appleton at all. Grant Hardin eventually accepted a plea deal in this case. Now, that plea deal was for Grant Hardin to spend 30 years in the Arkansas Department of Corrections for murder. If you don't know, when you are convicted of a felony like that, they take a DNA sample and they enter it into the state system. When they entered his sample into the state system, they got an unexpected hit. I don't think that police really expected this man who had been former law enforcement to be a suspect in a murder, to plead guilty to that murder, but then to get a hit on his DNA on a grape that happened where the teacher was the victim back in 1997, I am sure was really unexpected. But that's what happened. And that is how Grant Hardin ended up being subsequently charged with grape. He accepted a plea deal in that case. And that time was tacked onto the time that he already had for the capital murder. Now, that gets us to why Grant Hardin was in the North Central Unit there in Calico Rock up until this week when Grant Hardin decided to dress himself as an ADC correctional officer and was able to walk out of prison where they didn't even know that he was gone for over an hour. Grant Hardin remains at large. Police are searching for him. ADC is searching for him. I think that this highlights a lot of flaws in our prison system where a man has the ability to dress like a CO, whether or not it is an actual CO uniform. The ADC is saying it is not one of their issued uniforms, but obviously it was designed to look like that. So how this happens, I'm not really sure. I think that the state of Arkansas needs to get on why or how this could happen pronto. But I don't really think the answer here is taking things away from people who are already in prison, because it kind of feels like a little bit of an inside job to me, if I'm being honest. More details will come out. We'll see what gets said about it, but that is just my assumption. It just how he didn't even just walk out of the door. He's taking something out of the door and then disappears and they don't know that he's gone. So how a murderer who has been in this prison since 2017, 2018 can walk out of the door like this is beyond me, quite frankly. I'm looking forward to hearing other people's reactions to this and how it could possibly happen. If you live in northern Arkansas, where Gateway is located in that area, or even southern Missouri, please keep an eye out. This man, he's diabolical. He's really, truly diabolical. It wasn't even that these were his only crimes. He had also been charged with third-degree battery in the past. He's been charged with indecent exposure. Like, the man doesn't like to follow the law. We could sit here all day long and talk about how this is a person who was a former law enforcement, but I don't know that I'd call him former law enforcement or highlight the fact that he was a police chief of a town where the population is like 400 people. You know what I mean? This isn't anything at all against the people of Gateway. I myself tend to prefer small towns, but being the police chief of the town of Gateway would be like, in my mind, being the police chief of Mayberry. To be honest, you know, like where the police chief is also like the person that does your dry cleaning or something. I don't know. But it's not like your typical police chief of like a larger town. It wouldn't be like the same as being a police chief of Little Rock or Jonesboro or even, you know, Pine Bluff or one of those larger areas. This is like a little bitty town. So he does have experience. He worked for other police agencies. I think it said Rogers Police Department, perhaps Fayetteville Police Department. But I don't think that he had those jobs for just a long period of time. And in fact, he was only the police chief of Gateway for a few months. So that being said, I don't know that I really want to highlight that he was a police chief, but he does have law enforcement training. Now, I have noticed that when people are former law enforcement and they commit crimes, it seems like existing law enforcement, huddles around to protect them. Now, I don't understand that, because if I was law enforcement and someone committed a crime, I would think like, damn, that makes me look bad. These people don't, I don't know. I just feel like law enforcement just doesn't think that way. And maybe I'm wrong, and I'm willing to hear about how I'm wrong, but it just kind of feels like they get special treatment. So let's talk a little bit more about Grant Hardin. Grant Hardin, if you don't know, is the inmate that was able to escape Calico Rock, that prison facility there. Grant Hardin was in prison for murder from 2017 and rape, which he pled guilty to in 2018, but was actually charged from 1997. So he was able to walk out of the North Central unit in Calico Rock, which, if you don't know, Calico Rock, it's the middle of nowhere and it's up in the mountains. So you got to keep that in mind. Grant Hardin escaped from the Calico Rock unit on Sunday. He was able to put on what appears to be a uniform. Now, I discussed it in some of my other videos. The picture of the uniform does look black. The ADC issued uniforms for inmates. They're all white. Any clothing, as far as I know, that inmates are able to buy or to get access to are all white clothing. So this is not something that he was able to buy and fashion together. The CO, the correctional officer uniform for ADC, is dark navy pants and a lighter blue top, right? So what he is wearing looks more to me like maybe pants that are kind of that dark navy, but they actually, in the photo, they do look black. But he also has on a black top and a cap, which are not things that he would ordinarily have in prison. So he escaped from the unit on Sunday. I don't think anybody has seen him since then. And I honestly don't think that they have a clue where he is. And maybe I'm wrong. I do hope that I'm wrong. But whenever I'm reading reports saying that officers in Izard County, which is where Calico Rock is, are checking trunks of vehicles that come through the town, that leads me to believe that they don't have a clue where this man is. And a lot of people, not a lot, some people have escaped from prison, and maybe it's not a huge deal, but this man murdered a man. And I still have not seen a reason why he may have murdered that man. Also, he raped a teacher in 1997, and had he not murdered the man in 2017 and been caught for that, he may have never been caught for the rape of a teacher. Grant Hardin also has former LEO experience. It has been a major headline that he was a police chief in Arkansas. I think that is such an overstatement of what actually happened. He was a police chief for 3 months in 2016 before he resigned from the position. And he was a police chief for Gateway, where the population, if you Google it, it says that in 2023, the population was 444. So we're not talking about a large area at all. More to the point, I did misstate in one of my other videos, Grant Hardin did work in 1997 when he was fired in 1997. He was a police officer for Eureka Springs. Due to the fact that the rape of the teacher happened in, I'm just going off my memory here, but I believe it was November 1997, I would think that he likely got fired as a police officer and then committed the rape. I'm not saying that the two are related. I'm just saying, like, timeline-wise, he had worked as a police officer and then committed the rape. I would believe that that's true. Also, he was a correctional officer in Fayetteville at a women's unit. RPF is what I've heard it called. It's actually the old Washington County Jail. They used to house women in that facility up until, I want to say, a couple of years ago, maybe a few years ago. So he worked at that until sometime in 2017, where he was then arrested, for murder. I don't know that he worked there until the murder, but I know that he was a correctional officer. So he has that experience. Another thing that I want to talk to you about is the fact that he dressed so closely to some sort of officer. However you want to put it, he dressed so closely to some sort of officer that it caused a correctional employee to think that he was another correctional employee, and that correctional employee that was operating the gate that day on Sunday buzzed the gate to allow Grant Hardin to walk out. Now, I don't blame this on that particular gate employee unless that particular gate employee is involved in it. I think we could all probably agree that it was likely an inside job of some sort by someone. And I appreciate correctional officers. They do a job that I myself am not willing to do, and you won't hear me ever say otherwise. However, someone permitted Grant Hardin to get in the uniform that he wore when he escaped. The ADC is saying heavily, this is not their uniform. Okay. But they're also saying it's a makeshift uniform. And saying it's a makeshift uniform, I believe, leads people to believe that this man sewed this together or fashioned it together in some way. I don't think that that's true, because if that's the case, then you have to picture prison, picture him likely living in a dorm of some sort, in a barracks of some sort, and him sitting on his rack, his bed, sewing this all together. And not a single correctional officer doing count or anything else notices all of the black, all of the dark colored clothing that this man has. I don't believe that for 1 second. I don't believe that for 1 second. And also the hat that he's wearing. Where did he get that from? I would more likely believe that someone helped him get in the uniform that he is wearing, and he used that uniform to escape. I don't think that it's makeshift in the way that the Arkansas Department of Corrections is making it sound. I think that they're making it sound that way to cover their own behinds because of what has happened and the fact that they have such a large area of the state that is terrified right now of this man who seems to be, I truly think that the statements that ADC are making are to strictly mislead the public for the time being. So have you ever visited anyone in the Arkansas Department of Corrections? If you haven't, I have, so let me tell you what it's like. So when you go to the Arkansas Department of Corrections to visit anybody, first of all, you have to be approved on a list, and that takes a while to be approved. Secondly, you have to go through a lot of screening processes, right, to even be allowed to walk in the gate. So you walk up to a gate, and a person sitting in a tower has to look at you and buzz the gate for you to come through. And then there is another gate, and you have to close the first gate you walk in, walk to the second gate, and then they will buzz the second gate, and you close that gate. There are not gates left open so that anybody could just run through or anything like that. So that is how I knew before anything was ever said about a correctional officer allowing this man to walk through the gate that he had to have been buzzed through. And now the Arkansas Department of Corrections has pretty much verified that, because Grant Hardin has now been charged with escape, a B felony. Now, I will tell you, I don't think that Grant Hardin gives a crap about a B felony, considering all the time that he already has. But let's read that affidavit quickly. So according to the affidavit, it says that on May 25th, 2025, the Arkansas Department of Corrections inmate Grant Hardin escaped the custody of North Central Unit of ADC Inmate Hardin impersonated a corrections officer in dress and manner, causing the corrections officer operating a secure gate to open the gate and allow inmate Hardin to walk away from NCU. Now, I do want to include that everything I've said about the escape of Grant Hardin is just my opinion. It may very well be proven to be false, and I will admit that I was wrong when that happens. Please prove me wrong. I just want Grant Hardin arrested. I want him found. What is your opinion on how you think Grant Hardin was able to walk away from the Arkansas Department of Corrections and not even know that he walked away for over an hour?
Let's talk some more about Grant Hardin, the Arkansas escapee who escaped from North Central Unit in Calico Rock on Sunday. Now, a lot of information has been put out there. I've seen where it is possible that there have been sightings of Grant Hardin in Missouri. They're right around Howell County in Missouri. There have also been reported sightings possibly in the Faulkner County area. And both of these, Faulkner County is much further away from Calico Rock than Howell County in Missouri would be. I don't know that there have been any verified sightings, and it doesn't seem like police really know where he is. The FBI has a $20,000 reward available for information leading to the arrest of Grant Hardin. But so far, nothing has really came through on any of this. So, we've talked about Grant Hardin, the crimes that he has been convicted of. Grant Hardin was arrested in 2017 for the murder of James Appleton in early 2017. James Appleton was a person that worked for the water department in Gateway, which happened to be the same city where Grant Hardin was police chief a year earlier until he resigned from that position. Now, he was only in that position for a few months, and how he got that job, I'm not really sure, because it seems that Grant Hardin worked for other police agencies in the 90s, and he wasn't able to pass the test, the qualifications for any police agency. So how he became police chief, I'm not really sure. I mean, it was a small town and all, but it just seems like they would have done some checks or something. I'm not really certain. And I'm not certain what led to his resigning from that position. So when Grant Hardin pled guilty to that murder, he went to the Arkansas Department of Corrections. They took a DNA sample like they always do. They put it in the system, and that DNA sample hit on a grape from 1997. It was a grape of a teacher in a school that happened in Rogers, Arkansas in 1997. So that had been unsolved until that DNA hit. Grant Hardin pled guilty to the grape. And so he was serving a 50-year sentence. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murder. Then he was sentenced to 50 years in prison for the grape. And those sentences are to run concurrently. When you are sentenced to prison in Arkansas, you make your way eventually to Malvern, Arkansas, to the prison there, where they basically have a diagnostics setup of sorts to get all your information and stuff like that before you are sent to a parent unit. Now, the parent unit that Grant Hardin was sent to was Calico Rock. So he's been there his whole time in prison. Now, on Sunday, Grant Hardin was able to dress like an officer of some sort, where he was buzzed right out the gate and walked away from the Arkansas Department of Corrections. And he hasn't been seen since, or, assuming that none of the sightings have been confirmed, he hasn't been seen since.